Hi, my name is Jude Matulich-Hall, and this is Titles, Talk, and Tipples. My guest this evening is Bonsart Bokel, author of The Wrench in the Machine, the creator of S36 Call Girl comic book, and the brains behind the Association of Ishtar and Radio Retrofuture. Welcome, Bonsart.
Hello.
Great to have you here.
I just wanted to thank you for inviting me on.
Yes. And it's been a while. We've been trying to get you on for a while. We've been waiting for some things to happen, and they've happened, and we're going to talk about that today. But first, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Irish coffee without any Irish in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they left the EU, so we cannot put them in there anymore.
Oh, what's an Irish coffee without the Irish?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm drinking water. We were going to drink Pilsner, but I'm driving to the airport. And so I wanted to be responsible and not consume alcohol. And you're not consuming alcohol either, but I guess I could have.
No, I'm quite tired today, so I decided to have the Irishless Irish coffee.
There you go. Well, let's cheers. Tippling on water and coffee today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, you just published your debut novel. You just released your first comic book. You've had your shows for a while. The Association of Ishtar has been around for a while. Radio Retrofuture has been around for a while. But what would you like to talk about first?
Well, that's I don't know. Well, the funny thing is that I grew my audience with the Steampunk Beginner's Guide, and yet no one ever invited me to talk about that series, despite it probably being one of the most viewed steampunk series on YouTube.
Yeah, and it's you've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah. Actually, I've just been working on compiling the second season in a single video. I already made one of the first 2 years, I think. So I think I started with them in like 2016. So that's probably 2016, 2018. And now it's going to be like 2019, 2021. So yeah, I want to do like a little skit with Denkert at the beginning to also, call out the books. Mm-hmm. And so we'll see. I want to do some more smaller episodes on that as well, but I've been very busy with the writing process.
Sure, it takes up a lot of time.
Yes, and but the fun thing about it is that the presenter of the host of the Steampunk Beginner's Guide, Denkert Lexicon, also is part of the Association of Ishtar universe now. For the first time I'm actually working on his character and what he is like. So that is fun. And in the meantime, I was really getting into like the old classic pulp novels, like The Shadow. And I'm kind of like basing him on The Shadow now. So I'm really happy with that. And I hope to also make more lore videos. I started the second channel with just lore explanation and audiobooks. Don't have the time for that anymore. And I had found a writer, but he's been off and on the project, unfortunately, because we wanted to do a lore rendition of Space 1868, the steampunk role-playing game, which is also there since the 90s, I think, or maybe even older. So we wanted to do like a lore thing on that. I did a series on Last Exile, which is probably one of my favorite retrofuturistic series ever, and the world building on that world is just amazing. Mm-hmm. Never seen anything like it since, unfortunately, in steampunk. So I guess I'm kind of like trying to recreate what they've done in a way. And that's the Association of Ishtar. That's kind of came out of me constantly getting questions from people like, how do I create like characters and steampunk things? And it was a bit strange to talk about writing and world building and not doing any of your own. and I was at the time already. I already had the idea of the case files of the Association of Ishtar, which are all available on the website, or they will be, I should rather say, because they're still on the old wiki. But the SCP Foundation, which is a completely community-generated story series, I kind of wanted to make that for steampunk, because one of the issues, and I've been having this discussion with a lot of creators as of late in the background, that one of the issues that steampunk has is it's not like any other community out there. It's completely created by the community itself. There is no LucasArts or Disney or anything like that supporting it. And
hopefully they'll keep their hands off of it.
yeah, that too. Especially how Hollywood and places like that have been going as of the last 10 years. Yeah. But there's very little to talk about when it comes to steampunk. Like, hey, do you like steampunk? Yes, I like steampunk too. And then end of the conversation essentially. Then there is the issue, and this also comes into my definition of steampunk, which I do have a definition, and I think more people should accept that it can be described, but that's a whole other different matter. That you've got like a community of writers, a community of creators, and a community of people who go to the events, essentially. Sure. And there is like very few people. There are very few people who do all three, like myself, and that is. Well, a problem is maybe problematizing it too much, but you do notice, especially among creators and writers, there's a certain fatigue. People who actually try to create content because there's this disconnect. Like when, for example, the BattleTech community, which I'm growing into, which is something that I've also loved since childhood, since they made a cartoon out of that series. Mm-hmm. It's basically a series about big stumpy robots.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, that community, man, they are. I'm actually talking to fan creators of that series for my upcoming project. So I hope that will come true. But once somebody is working on a fan project, the community is there to support it. Either they give money or they start sharing it with everyone, and that does not happen a lot in the steampunk community, unfortunately. And
there's different people. So you've got the dabblers that just dabble in steampunk. Then on the other extreme, you have the people that live the steampunk life, and then you kind of have some people in the middle. I think of myself as in the middle, a little bit, where it's part of our career. We do the cosplay and stuff, but in my day-to-day living, I'm not steampunk, So, but it's a fantastic genre. It's a wonderful culture. It seems to be a very supportive culture, but there's this weird background of like, people actually fighting over, like you were saying, you think steampunk should be able to be defined, but there are people that fight over what steampunk is. On Facebook right now, there's kind of a little battle going on between a couple of groups in the background. Nobody's being really upfront with it or stuff, but it's definitely there. And I think that's just very bizarre that people seem to have to fight no matter what they're doing, what genre they're in, and what their culture is.
Well, I mean, it's good. I don't think the right discussions are being held in that regard, and I've been now reaching out to other people who are, been sticking my hands out about some of my complaints that I have experienced, because you'd think that a series like the Steampunk Beginner's Guide that would be shared around by the wide community, but if I get like 3 likes on Facebook, I should call myself lucky.
You have a lot of followers. I mean, that's how I found you, was the Steampunk Beginner's Guide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but I don't like, those are accumulated over a lot of years. And I don't see that reflected. When I post a video, if it gets 250 views, that's a lot for my channel.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. The first video of the Steampunk Beginner's Guide is tens of thousands of views now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. But it does not get shared. I notice when it gets shared because all of a sudden I'll have 3 more subscribers.
Yeah.
And that happens like once in a blue moon. And that's kind of like, but I've also had groups who kick me out because I share videos there.
Oh.
So, yes. So you're constantly...
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. I would want anybody to share.
Oh, no, I've been, people have been very hostile for sharing.
As long as they're not claiming it to be their own, I mean...
No. They see it as of course it's self-promotion, but when you share pictures of yourself, you're doing self-promotion, right?
Right. Oh, I see. Yeah.
But yeah, for some reason when it's a video, you're all of a sudden crossing a line or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe that's also because of how Facebook treats external links.
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
So that could also be, but yeah, as a creator, you're constantly walking on eggshells for that reason.
And there's so much out there, it's really hard to, in the beginning, it's, my algorithms were so off. I was getting finally my algorithms are figuring out what I want to see and stuff. But, there's a lot of content out there and everybody's trying to make it out there. And so the more we boost each other, the better that's going to be. We need each other. We can't do
that's the thing, and I've been talking to Pops van Zandt. He runs a channel called Comic Book Madness. And, it was a very different experience because of my comic book. Let's see what happens in the comic book corner. I'm not much of a comic book fan. How I started creating my comic was a bit of an accident.
Mm-hmm.
I had a comic book creator on my show called SK. He's a creator from Australia, and he's working on a comic series called Wordsmith, also steampunk style. So that's how he said, okay, I'll coach you, how to write. How to write. I'll coach you how to write, how to turn that into a comic, and that's S36. Which is the first story I ever made. Yep. For the association, and this story is the entire foundation of the entire series. So there's a very experienced, for me, I say there's this difference between building a world and world building. Well, this right here is pure world building. The difference between my experience in the steampunk community and the comic book community is, the moment I entered their space, as it were, and one guy said, "Oh, we reached our Kickstarter goal this today." And so I just said, "Hey, congratulations, dude!" Yeah. Because that's what I would like, and I barely got any response to, "Hey, I finished my comic," and nothing. That's what I get a lot, and that's very disheartening. But when I entered the comic book community, I just said congratulations to a guide, and he adds me as a friend on Facebook, and before I know it, I'm invited to join 2 podcasts. Bit of a difference.
Well, and I think it's very hard right now. I just I have a couple of friends, we're talking in the back, on the side, not on this show, but them just having a hard time of getting seen, and it's so hard. And we're all, I think it's very easy to get caught up in just promoting ourselves because we want to make it, but ultimately it's like, if you're going to be that person that's only promoting yourself and you're never reaching out to someone else when they've had a success, you're gonna eventually get booted off of everything because you're not helping anybody else. You're only there for yourself. And that is the nice thing about like Facebook cracking down on spamming. When I first, because I only started doing social media heavily about 1.5 years ago. And when I first started, I mean, you know, I would see the same person's stuff over and over and over again. But, you know, Facebook has kind of started cracking down on that. So it's a little more controlled, that people can't just like continually spam other people with their stuff. And well, and that's why I started this show, because I want to boost other writers and other creators. You know, I do comic book and graphic novel folks and stuff too. But those people are just going to find themselves lacking if they're not reaching out to other people, and they're only in it for themselves. You know, it's a very
I was actually just reached out to by Bridget Brandmark.
Oh yeah,
I think you know. So
she's my illustrator. Or she's my illustrator. She's an illustrator that I have worked with. That's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but to come back to the Association of ISHTAR then, because that's kind of like the master plan that I had in mind. Was like I said, it's funny that in my review that in Sean March of Little Wait and Watchtower fame, his book won 5 awards, by the way. He he said there's a master plan in the review. And the thing is, because when you look at, for example, let's take the BattleTech community again, there's this group called the Black Pants Legion, and what you see in those communities is like the guys come there for BattleTech, but you know, this guy has a project on the side, that guy has a project on the side, you know, and they come for the BattleTech, they stay for each other, and they support each other. You know, and it's very hard in steampunk. And what I kind of like hope to achieve with the Association of Ishtar, like people come for the Association of Ishtar stories and fantasize about that world, and then they stay for the other people involved in the project and the other fans, and you know, then start supporting. And that's kind of like, you know, what I imagine would help. It's not there yet. I mean, I barely sold any books at this point, so we'll
but
see.
You just released it, so
yeah, we'll see. But well, it is. It's an emotional roller coaster, and you know, it's something that you worked very hard on, and then to see no one buy it is like.
You know, I think you just keep doing it, keep talking to people. It's a slow, I think it's a slow process. I mean, I know a couple of writers that, one gal, writer Kinley, she's an extreme or splatterpunk extreme kind of horror writer. She was promoting herself a year before she released her book, you know, like pretty heavily, and getting lots of followers and stuff. So when she did release her book, she was completely prepared when she released her book, and everything was on par. So she immediately started getting sales and stuff. But like, you know, I saw it with mine with COVID, and she did it all throughout COVID too. But she had quite the head on her shoulders she did everything right, you know. And I'm like, you know, but then you get someone else that it's like they might be promoting themselves for a year, but things don't go all correct as they're releasing it. And so it's like maybe their ebook goes out, then like a month later their paperback goes out, and then a month later, you know, it's like, so she was just really on top of it. So, and I think it's also luck, you know. I'm not one to say, you know, be like, oh, it's just all about luck and chaos and stuff, but sometimes it is.
Oh, you know, some guys say, well, it's 99% marketing, you know, and then you're diving back into the Amazon things, and then you're like, how do these keywords work and stuff, and then you're like, oh, I think I've done them all wrong. And as today also, I'm trying, you know, to see if advertising helps, you know. So that seems to be pretty low risk. So that's something that I'm looking into. Of course, you're just giving more money to Amazon, what the whole point of the system is. So, but you know, in a moment, I'll have like a whole pile of novels, and I already have a pile of comics, and then I'll say, okay, guys, and now I'm sending out signed books and see how people will respond. At some point, I want to do a hardcover that combines both the comic and the novel, because they're supplements of each other.
Yeah.
And as I posted in the group, I'm also working on the idea of a coloring book and see, various artists and how they work, and if I enjoy working with them. And so we'll see, because unfortunately my other artist will not be working with me for the foreseeable future. So that's a shame, because I really enjoyed this artwork. But yeah, that's how it goes. So that's why I want to have a pool of artists. Because I also want to include more art in the videos we make on the series as well. So and that's also what I hope the community will do, that we make steampunk videos together. In one more form or another. I don't have a consistent style. So but yeah, the reactions are always very positive, because people don't expect it. The Association of Ishtar does not have like the typical, or at least the main world does not have the typical steampunk aesthetic. So there's always a surprise to see, oh well, it doesn't have just the top hats and cogs.
Oh yeah, you've got a lot of different aspects. So say that a writer wanted to get involved with the Association of Ishtar, as though I don't know anything about it. What's kind of the rules? Because you obviously have rules that people have to follow if they're going to be writing for the Association of Ishtar, right? Putting in content, because you want to keep the rules of your universe consistent. But so kind of give us a rundown of what that looks like for a new writer coming into the.
Yeah, well, of course. The first assumption is that you enjoy the concepts to begin with. The original idea I had was to create a universe in which people could introduce concepts that they work with.
Their own concepts?
Their own concepts, yes. That they could insert a world into the universe with its own rules, so to speak. I have an aversion against magic because it's too easy. It's also it's to promote high concept writing. I want to see more steampunk high concept writing, rather than the typical fantasy dressed in steampunk, which most of what I've seen is. To make it more science fiction. I also get this response from people, there is this desire for a harder, more back to the roots of Verne and Wells type science fiction. The rom-com is nice and so, but they're reading it because of the aesthetic. They don't care as much for the comedy and stuff. And I especially noticed this for the people who are more into role-playing games and stuff like that.
Oh, I see.
Because especially for role-playing games, you need a ground rule for how the universe works.
Oh yeah, you've got to have limits to your universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta have limits.
This is also comes into my mind with the whole discussion on definitions. It can be whatever you want. It's but that's not true. I know that from experience, because when I published the cover, I immediately got it looks too Victorian.
Well, that's what steampunk
this is kind of the hypocrisy that I'm talking about. They say, you can do whatever you want with steampunk,
but you can't.
As long as it has the brown top hat with goggles, it's like Ford. You can have whatever color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah. Well, steampunk originated in the 80s. The word steampunk originated in the 80s. That came about in the 80s, and it's this is my definition of it. It's Victorian era meets 1950s futurism. So that's what it was, and so people, and of course, other things have come out of that. I mean, people meld cyberpunk into it, goth punk into it.
Well, that's where it
punk.
originally comes from. It comes from the cyberpunk authors like William Gibson and Bruce Sterling, who wrote the Difference Engine, which was the first book that called itself steampunk. Keeter coined the term steampunks in his letter to Lotus magazine. And it was kind of like a joke, and that's kind of problem, that people take the name far too seriously, that everything has to be like steam powered and stuff. And for me, when I look at steampunk, for me, what I see is like this alternate history combined with modern pop culture tropes, and especially modern tropes from, well, now of course after the Marvel movies came out, like a lot of the Marvel movies and superhero tropes, but also the science fiction tropes, time travel, space travel, all this, the multiverse, of course, an ancient science fiction trope. And that's what I see. The constant reference to pop culture is obvious in steampunk. The steampunking of Star Wars and other well-known franchises. So I don't even limit it. And when it comes to the historical side, yes, the 19th century is a popular topic, but it's far from the only one. And especially one of the reasons also why I wanted it to be a multiverse, so you can have your steampunk Aztecs and your steampunk all those other cultures that are often ignored. I also want to include in a spin-off series of what I'm doing now. A lot takes place in Flavoland, which should be a far more talked about topic, because they literally made an island land out of a sea. But it's not worthy of the steampunk's attention, and one of the reasons is because it is not crept into pop culture. The moment something creeps into pop culture, it will creep into steampunk. And that's also how they treat history. I mean, if you ask a steampunk who Bismarck was, they'll name the battleship. They don't know that it's probably one of the most important people from the Victorian era who, basically unified Germany and therefore dictated the future of the world.
You're right.
They have no idea who that man is. So, and I tested this, where when I did presentations on events, I would ask, to demonstrate my point, how poor the average historical awareness of a steampunk is. It's like, okay, who's Bismarck? Well, maybe some of them, and this is before the song by Sabaton, some of them would raise their hand and say it was a battleship. That's it,
Well, isn't that the way? You're always going to have people that do delve into the historical aspects, that do their research to back up their stuff, and then you're going to have other people that just kind of fly by.
But I'm mentioning this to point my point that it is not so much the history that steampunks care about; it's the pop culture tropes of history that they care about. And that's why I put so much emphasis on pop culture, because if the pop culture changes, so will steampunk, and how they portray it. I mean, the Victorian the version that's portrayed is that from Dickens, because that's the one they know. So every time it's like this picture of the poor people in the factory and then the evil rich people. And when you look at the era and how it progressed and how those things came to be, that creates a completely different picture of that era. And but that's not what they care about. They care about that pop culture image. So that's how the steampunk came to be. And what's annoying me, and I wrote a blog post about this in regards to the remarks I got on the cover, was that, and I heard this from other creators as well, that you've got this strange dynamic going on, where when it comes to, let's say, Marvel superheroes, who are they talking about? Well, it's the superheroes who decide what the superheroes look like. Well, it's the creators of the comics. Perfectly fine. But all the cosplayers will then mimic the new version of Thor or whatever superhero.
Sure. Yeah.
Just got a new film. However, what I noticed and what aggravated me so much about the cover discussion was that me as a creator who's creating something, bringing something out there, then gets criticized for not conforming to how the people dress on the events.
Oh, what?
Yes, that's what this is.
So
why were they like, oh, it looks too Victorian?
I don't know. To me, you say steampunk, there's going to be a Victorian aspect to it. There should always be a Victorian aspect to it. That's where it came from.
Yes, but here's the thing. Where are the goggles? Where are the cogs and weird gizmos?
Oh, well, I mean,
where are the cock earrings?
But it's your story. So, for me,
that's yes, exactly.
I mean, I'll do the cogs and all that and the goggles and stuff, but that's mine and yours is yours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
what aggravated me. That it's not conforming to how people dress on the event, so it's not proper steampunk. That's where we have gone to. And because, we're not, we are not promoting like a vision for steampunk that's cohesive. We just say, well, everyone basically takes the coward's way out and says, oh, it can be whatever you want. We don't want to offend you. And
I mean, I understand that too. But your title is the cog in the machine.
Yeah.
So even though you don't have cogs on the cover, the word cog is there. So I'm surprised that didn't satisfy people. I love your cover. It's very steampunk to me. You really catch and your story matches the cover. The cover matches the story. I'm happy. I am reading it.
A wonderful job of it. Yeah.
And your story is very steampunk. I mean, you have aspects that are, I mean.
Well, it's literal cyberpunk in the past. I don't, you're only halfway. So.
Yeah. That's true.
You already met the antagonist, but it's. I mean, the wrench in the machine is, of course, a reference to the Ghost in the Shell. In case that was
or the wrench in the machine. I'm sorry, I said the cog in the machine.
Yeah.
I apologize for that. The wrench in the machine, but I mean, it's the title is very steampunk. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, it took me a long while to actually come up with that. First I had a far more dramatic name, but it's like, But no, then there is this one line that I think you already met, Associate 321.
Mm-hmm.
Who says it? Who mentions it?
Oh,
and
I'm trying to remember. I'm racking my brain.
Associate 321. If you're halfway the book, he is the associate that.
Yeah. The woman, right?
The black man.
Oh yes. I'm sorry. The numbers. I don't have the numbers clear yet. Yes.
Well, the point of numbers
21.
Is
I like that character. I don't know. I like his personality. Yeah. So
no, he's.
I just found out the name he's going by. I think that's where I just got to.
Oh, so that's about his past in Libya.
Yeah. That's where I am in the story. He just and I don't know if it's his real name, but it's the name he's using. I'm kind of like leaving that up for discussion because I actually have like this kind of like headcanon that the whole story is a lie, but and then make of that what you will. But like he was in Liberia and he did meet that slave owner, but But that's for the future story probably. But yeah, he was very difficult to figure out for me when I wrote him because he's clearly thematic for the book and his observations. But
I had a hard time figuring him out, what he was about. And he is a character who, well, he makes observations about the situation, but he's also a cause of the problem. Which is also, well, the wrench in the machine title is referring to.
Spoilers.
So I actually had this idea that that he and Alborough really came to a head, because Alborough is a man on the street who sees the consequences of well, whatever, be it policies or strange changes that happen there. He is therefore somewhat averse to authority, combined with his own personal traits. Whereas, 321 somehow, I kind of see him like someone who has kind of like given up on that, and is trying to fix like major issues, and then hoping that somehow there will be a trickle down effect that will solve the problem for everyone.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
And that was very hard to figure out the dramatic clash between the two persons. It does not really happen. Kinda, it does. But yeah, it was interesting to figure out, because I also got like this fascination for that part of African history, and especially the West Africa Squadron, which is one of those completely forgotten pieces of history that, well, now there has been renewed interest in it, but for a long time it was intentionally ignored, intentionally strawmans by certain political entities. And now, like, I mean, it's you are familiar with what the West Africa Squadron is?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that you brought those aspects into your
you know how many monuments they have?
No, I don't. One, of course,
in Sierra Leone, in Freetown.
Yeah,
like it's a typical plaque that the British monuments use for all their monuments. They have this plaque, and they have like one, and it's in Sierra Leone. And like in England, they got like one exhibition dedicated to them. And Obama received a splinter of one of the last remaining boats of the West Africa Squadron. So that is the thanks they get.
Yeah. And one thing, and another thing that I enjoy, when writers bring in aspects like that in their stories, if I don't know the reference, I will look it up, because and so that's one thing when a writer does their research and they bring in aspects like that into their stories, I highly appreciate it, because I get to learn.
There another reference?
I get to expand my brain instead of it just all being 100% fiction. I like real stuff being brought in.
I am a historian, and one of the things that what appeals to me, like, I'm both a fan of science fiction and history. And what for me, and also one of another reason why the Association of History is so important to me is that exploration, and the research that people put in. It makes a world so much more alive when you're like, I didn't know that. Like, I had proofreaders. I called the doll doctor, and that she was descended from Orangists, Orange royalists, and that's a reference to the House of Orange, which, of course, when Napoleon conquered the Netherlands, were not that welcome. So that person looked it up, what it was, and then was, okay, so and that's one of the reasons. And you see this like with a lot of fiction, or video games for that matter, where World of Tanks, it's just a game about tanks shooting at each other, but there are historical tanks like tanks that never existed, only existed on paper, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And people play that game and they're like, why is this tank designed this way? Why does it look so different from the tanks that we know? And people start, those kids, they start researching it, and before you know, you've got like a 12-year-old who's an expert on tanks from the 1920s.
Yeah.
Because
cool.
that's their experience. That's what they experience, and it's like, and they talk about it on the forums, and that's also one of the reasons. Again, with the whole Association of Ishtar, please explore those historical things, and sometimes that's very difficult, because I also like with the spin-off stories of Flevoland, I also want to go with that group to Africa. But that's going to be an extremely painful history, because the black and white history of the Atlantic slave trade wasn't that one-sided, and it's an insane history, and the horrible thing is that because so much of that is ignored, people don't understand why Africa is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And the horrible thing is, I had this conversation with other authors on this topic, and after that, when we talked about it, and then we cut the podcast, and the next day they said, oh yeah, well, great conversation, but could you please remove it because we are afraid it might offend our publisher.
Oh.
So
that's too bad.
And then that's the problem with the whole current discourse. Like, why is the African why is Africa the way it is now? Well, we can talk about it because it might offend people. And so people start talking in veiled language like we're doing now, and and that's. So when I do start writing about Africa, it's probably going to be like some fictional kingdom. Also because it's extremely hard to find any historical works on Africa. I found one book after a long search. I found one book on the history of Liberia by a guy who went there, and I forgot its name. But like, he also explains like, why is there so little history on apart from like the political implications? Why is there so little history on Africa? Well, there was no written record of that time. Everything is like oral tradition, or we know it from European explorers. And in case of Liberia, like that entire like that parody of the South that I described in the ranch. That it was all destroyed. That's all burned down, and for very obvious reasons. But that entire history, it's gone. Like, all the information he found was like from the few people that survived, like all the horrible things that happened there. And that's also the whole reason why that country is now the poorest country in the world. Where the only source of income is like a rubber plantation from fire. The car manufacturing, car tires. They manufacture car tires. Yeah, and that's the best thing that happened to that country in the last 50 years. Like, that's how poor that country is.
Yeah.
And he also describes, whenever he's talking to people there, they're all talking about going back to the United States, where a lot of them come from, or they have family in the United States who move back, because no one wants to live there. And it's all connected to that, to the slave trade.
Still.
And it's a tragic history. And to write about that, it's impossible to write a historically accurate picture.
Because the information isn't there.
The information just isn't there. There was this account from somebody who went to Africa, and he found like this ruin there, this old ruin, and he asked like some locals, like, what is that? And they said, well, white people built it there. Like, white people when? Like, I don't know, 700 years ago, something like that. Those people had no idea that their ancestors built that.
Oh.
That's the level of what we're talking about. And it's you know, and then I want to write something about that on how Africa functions these days, because one of the interesting things about the world where the Association of Ishtar is located, it's like 1870 time wise. It's 1876, I think. The French. The French-German war already happened. The French won, so Germany isn't unified. But technologically, it's all for many parts, pop culture wise, car wise, I suppose too. It's like 1920, something around that time. So time chronologically 1870. Technologically 1920, with some futuristic stuff like what the Dragoons have, for example. There, you know, they have that technology is all hidden, concealed, you know, X-Files level stuff. So they also have like to invent all these ways to conceal it for the public, for the population. Because they have this Uttercrap, the company that is mentioned.
Uttercrap, I love that.
Uttercrap, yes. Uttercrap actually decided purely began as a joke, and then now it's a genuine, very extremely important player in the world, and they have created Flevoland, which is in the Netherlands, and they created Nova Polis there, which is their corporate capital and their corporate cult. And I already started work on a kind of like a spin-off series that really goes into like how Uttercrap operates. I guess
I love that.
It's like this corporate cult. It's started by two gay men. They were the first married couple in that world. And it is kind of like, well, imagine Tesla and Edison marrying. But having the same relationship.
Yeah. That's great.
So you can imagine what kind of marriage that was. However, they were very important for gay rights and stuff like that. Of course, it's all very self-serving and all that stuff, but you know, it's interesting to play with it now. Their adopted son, who was like originally a orphan from Czechoslovakia, I think he was, you know, and now he's trying to kind of like keep this massive company together, which is now this hydra all over the world, and they're all following their own agendas. And one of these adventures, there's this mercenary group, and they want to bring the old knighthoods back. And they have these well, you know, the diving suits, like the big daddies from BioShock, you know, and well, they're kind of like that. Cool. They're start. It's kind of like Ghostbusters, really, when they start like building one of these crappy things, and meanwhile, this guy is constantly talking about how he wants to like start a new knightly order with knightly principles. Unfortunately, the only one who has the technology to help them is Uttercrap.
Uttercrap.
And they basically become this. But Uttercrap is not.
But yeah.
Uttercrap, yeah. Uttercrap. Actually, it probably should be pronounced Utterkrupp. Utterkrap.
Utterkrap.
German.
Yeah.
That's how the English would pronounce it. So Utterkrap.
Yeah.
If it's not Utterkrap, it's just a piece of shit.
Yes.
They have their technology is genuine Utterkrap quality.
Utterkrap.
So, but yeah, they basically become this quasi mercenary outfit who have these knightly principles. They're marketing themselves as knights, and you know, for the public, they become like the idea is that they become like these media darlings. You know, these genuine knights, young men who are sacrificing themselves, fighting against all these outsiders, flooding through the rifts into the world. You know, like genuine St. Georges, as it were. And then they have to go to Africa because the mines where the technology depends on is being raided by one of these local warlords, who also turns out to have this relationship with an outsider force, of course. But you know, and then they're like in this situation where they're basically having to wage war on the local population, who well, they're thinking they're fighting against the colonials, and these knights are fighting well, we're here to save the world. Why won't you let us fight them? So, what starts this? That's basically the idea, that they start of like being these noble knights, and then all of a sudden they become like, okay, now we're just corporate mercenaries. But if we do not do this, we cannot have our technology. So who's winning?
Right.
That's the idea. But yeah, for that, you really have to like come up with like fictional kingdoms and fictional things, because the tribal relationships there are so complex, and when the British entered the slave trade there, it basically was like how the mafia families operated. This is also one of the things that is never talked about, like the reason for the race for Africa, which was you had these West Squadron captains, and they were like going after slave traders, but slave traders, there's always a new one,
Oh yeah.
So that's endless. So they were like, okay, this is not helping, we have to go for the source. So they went on land, but they were not supposed to do, but who's going to stop them? So they went on land and started making deals with all these local warlords, and if you if you do this for us, we'll protect your ships or something, and then you wage war with that guy. And they were basically playing out all these local warlords and kings against each other. And that's basically how they ended the slave trade, essentially. Of course, all these other powers in Europe were looking at that, and they see like the British invading Africa, and they were like, oh, we need to do that too now. And that's essentially how the race for Africa started.
Yeah. So
that's
people.
Yeah. But it's for me, it sounds a bit crude to call it entertainment, but it's edutainment in a word.
Yeah,
because
it's a passion of yours.
Yeah, well, that too. But I mean, like you said, you reference something, and then people they see a strange name. It's like, what is that a thing?
Yeah.
And I mentioned electric cars. Now, many people will say, "Oh, they didn't have electric cars." But
they did. They've had electric cars since the late 1800s.
Yes.
Is it mid 1800s? I can't remember.
They were been around for a long time.
50s or something. Yeah.
They were around for a long time. And,
I'm trying to remember what I saw, but they've been around.
In the 1920s, they had charging stations everywhere. But the problem with electric cars is they don't have a lot of power. I'd love to have a hybrid car, but then I can't pull or car to events because they just don't have the power to do that. That's what a lot of people don't understand about electric cars. There's a trade-off there.
Sure.
Not to mention the environmental impact, which they might cost as much carbon, push as much carbon in the air to make as they do. But but it's fun to explore like difficult subjects that way, because there's this distance, and the partisan mindset does not activate as quickly. And that's rather unfortunate that we have to teach people history that way these days. But
people, we're really just wanting entertainment all the time. We're not entertained, we're disengaged. It's okay. I think it's okay to make education entertaining.
Well, first of all, we have to, because of the attention spans of people these days. That's one thing. But it's also because people do not just go look for information randomly. There are not that many people going on Wikipedia and give me just random information.
Sure.
Because I before I did Steampunk, I was very active in the reenactment. We did 14th century mercenaries, and then we would depict these mercenaries. Like we had this whole program, like we had all these displays of weapons and stuff like that, where we would like tell people about weapons and armor and how it all worked, and trying to dispel all these prejudices about the Middle Ages.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that whole edutainment, and everything becomes so much more real for children when they can actually touch things and feel things.
Oh yeah.
And, especially armor, which they believe is like weighs a ton and you cannot move and you need to be raised on the horses.
Yeah.
So
which would make no sense whatsoever.
Yeah,
to go into battle if you can't move.
So that was something that was always very important to me. And when I came into the whole steampunk thing, one of the things was you've got such an arsenal of possibilities to entertain people and teach them things and education is very important. It's also one of the reasons why I started the Steampunk Beginner's Guide. To both entertain and teach people things and create new perceptions of stuff. And you can do that with steampunk very easily. You can put a character in a historical situation with whatever you want, and still teach people things about individuals or things or hypotheticals. And that's and there's very little of that. Everyone is very focused on making up background stories for their characters and telling me how awesome they are, how strong they are, and that they're all captains. I don't know who the crews are, but they are all captains. And it's
sure.
It's like it's you listen to it and you're 5 minutes later you even forgot you met that person. Whereas if
because a captain needs a crew, it's okay to develop your smaller characters too.
Yeah, and one of the things I liked about working on the Wrench in the Machine, that Albro isn't a hero. He's an older guy. He already went through his hero's journey, so to speak. And it's also a bit about, I guess, in part also a little bit about maturity and him being confronted with his own past when a specter comes back. Who also turns into this disembodied voice in a sense. I forgot the character's name for a moment. But I had a lot of joy doing his voice. MacArthur, that's the name.
Okay, I haven't gotten that far.
Oh yeah, he's the revolutionary that whose legs were broken by Albro when he was younger.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yeah, I got that.
So I also had a lot of. I already recorded the audiobook. I need to edit it, but it's so much. Fun. I think I'm gonna do it in the first chapter is already online, and I think I'm gonna post them all chapter by chapter. See what the response is.
Yeah.
Because there were already people like, oh, this is quite awesome. Because it's something with the steampunk aesthetic, but there's also history in there. So you're creating this multi-layered thing, and if it's all fantasy, it's all fantasy, and well, then it really depends on whether you will dig it or not. Sure. That's also a major difference.
And so speaking of that, so there's well, actually, I might edit that. Go ahead and finish your thought, and I wanted to ask you.
I already forget where I was going.
I'm sorry.
I was talking about maturity, and then he was confronted with this specter from his past. And that's also kind of like reflected in the character of Igraine. Who I already have big plans for.
They're both really great characters, and I like their relationship.
Oh yeah, I really worked on working on that relationship, and I originally for the second novel I wasn't intending for Albro to be there, but I decided that the novel will start with them meeting again after a couple of years.
Cool.
Of course, it's again it's going to be about maturity, that one, because then it's about Igraine growing up.
Because in this story she's a teenager and she kind of has her little temper tantrums and her angsty teenager, that has been through something very incredible and
oh yeah. You have to read how it ends.
I haven't. But don't ruin the end for me.
Well, you won't expect it. So
I usually try to finish a book before I talk to someone so that I don't. Well, and if you need to spoil it for me, that's my bad that I didn't get it finished before I talk to you.
It's also something. If I would, it would be like, what the fuck? What? How did this come to be? So,
sure. Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean, I think the story is quite takes on very unexpected turns, which is also the fun thing about high concept. Because high concept does not really. Well, it has heroes' journeys, but they're in the background, they're not front and center. And that's also what I like about it. And it really was like exploring, like, okay, what is this Albro character? What is his thing? How is his thing related to the big theme? But also not falling in the trap what a lot of high concept stories do, where the character is just this stand-in for a particular point of view, like in Steamboy, which is a very, it's a wonderfully animated film. The story is okay, but the characters suffer because of it just wants to be too much. So all the characters are just stand-ins really for a particular point of view of the author. So they're not really characters beyond that, which is a shame. But I mean, otherwise, it's probably one of the best steampunk themed films out there. Because it actually has my vision of steampunk, this cyberpunk in the past, and when it comes to Albro and the whole thing, the whole wrench in the machine element, it's like, okay, what do the villains want? But what is their motivation? That was something I really had to think a lot about. Have you met? Oh no, you have not met the Perfect yet.
No.
Oh, that's gonna be. Yeah, let me know your response to him.
Sure.
But yeah, the cult, if it wasn't obvious already, I think it's already obvious that they're transhumanists who basically believe this. It's actually on the back cover that they believe humanity to be this dead end. And I'm currently working on the.
Wait, that sounds a little familiar. So maybe I have gotten there.
If you recall the Perfect, you probably have not met him yet. He is quite a special character.
Yeah, the humanities dead end. That sounds quite familiar. So
yeah, that's something that's literally on the back cover.
Okay. So maybe that's
probably where you recognize it from.
Like I do remember, it's been like a week since I've read. I'm gonna have to back up a little bit to refresh my or scan. To refresh my memory. I've taken on way too many reading projects. I need to start finishing some books so that I can focus on one at a time, because I don't know why I do that to myself. I do not like reading more than one book at a time, but I inevitably always start to do something like that. And then I find, oh my gosh, I've started 6 books. What am I doing? Focus. But I'm definitely finishing yours before I finish the others. So one thing that comes up in the steampunk community is steampunk sci-fi or is it fantasy? And like, so I know there's a flip-flop there. And I kind of feel like it can be either or both at the same time. I don't think it needs to be, I don't think that I don't think we need to choose which one it is. I don't think it needs to be a hard, fast rule in steampunk that it should be sci-fi or it should be fantasy,
But this is again where the whole disconnect between the costume genre and aesthetics part comes in. Because you've got a lot of. I was recently we did a podcast on Mortal Engines. It's probably one of the most overrated series out there as far as I'm concerned. But and I started summarizing it for my co-host Vander, and I just said, this sounds like this story sounds like a typical fantasy novel, doesn't it? And it's like, yes. And I actually did a couple of episodes on Mortal Engines because it's the disconnect between the plot and what it pretends to be is very interesting to me. And you see this a lot where it presents itself as a high concept story. Like, it's these cities duking it out, and it's like, oh, that's awesome. It's going to be about, these driving cities fighting with each other and what that would look like. None of that. It's really just about it's this low concept story about the cool characters, and the driving cities are basically just a backdrop to it with some ham-fisted social commentary put in there, and it just does not work for me. Because they're it's like they're promising you vanilla and you get chocolate, and then you don't like chocolate. You're like. So, and then that's kind of like why I get triggered by that book so much. But because I also ask like other people, like, how's this supposed to work? How's that supposed to work? And none of that is fleshed out. Because the only thing that matters is the characters, and everything else. It could have been flying islands. It could have been anything else. It wouldn't have changed the plot at all. Just the details. And that's low concept in a nutshell. So yeah, that's why I kind of like have this I don't know, this resentment to praise Mortal Engines, as it were. I guess not to. And that's what I see a lot with the steampunks, where there's very few actual high concept steampunk. There is The Guns Above by Robin something, but that's actually about, okay, we've got an airship, what is life on that ship like, and going into brutal detail what it is like, how the logistics work, how the crews are formed. You've got this entire, and I love the characters in that story, by the way, as well.
Nice.
And but there's very little of that. It gets very little praise in the steampunk community, and a lot of people, they make like low concept characters, and there's nothing really wrong with that, but that's where the whole difference between the fantasy and the sci-fi part comes in. Now, historically, it comes from the cyberpunk community. It's created by cyberpunk writers, and they were doing basically, well, science fiction stories in the past, reimaginings of worlds and that kind of stuff. So historically, it's absolutely part of the sci-fi genre. However, I don't know if writers are not taught the difference between high concept and low concept, or if they do not understand sci-fi at all, or they just don't care about it. They just love the aesthetic. I think it's the latter. They just like the aesthetic. Because there is most definitely high concept steampunk out there. It's often just a lot of short stories and stuff. And the problem with high concept short stories, it's just, this one thing. You don't
really. I did a I felt like it was a high concept short story, and then someone was just like, this is like a day in life. I got a complaint that this is just the day in the life of this guy, and it's like, well, that's exactly what the story's about. It's about this this kid that works up, and anyway, I won't go into this.
But you're right, and it's hard to that's the problem with high concept short stories. It's often just this one revelation, this one thing, this one idea, and then you're like, oh, okay.
It's like I was showing how the guy traveled and what his job was, and what and it was a lot of environment, and there was a thing happened, but people weren't happy with it.
It's hard to write compelling high concepts. I Have No Mouth on my I Must Scream is probably one of the most famous ones, and that's, but it has like this interesting cast of characters. They work together. They hate each other, but they have to work together, and they're just going through all these horrible tortures. And it's you got to have the imagination to come up with all that. And with a lot of, especially when you are looking at the very short stories, it's just, oh, I have room for this one idea in my high concept, so it's just that high concept, and they forget to. When I try to explain it, it's like, okay, you've got like your main idea, okay, but then you've got like all these sub questions.
Sure.
And you need to formulate all the sub questions. Then, okay, how do you like do that? Answer that question, that question, that question, that question, and then you come up with all these characters that explore like these various. But that's a lot of work.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And if you only have 1,000 words.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's. I don't know how long I Have No Mouth is, but he went through that process, and he got to that, and with the S46 story, which is based on the interdimensional assassin, I call them for the noobs.
The noobs.
The noob, yeah. How else do you describe something that complex?
Sure,
but
it's hard to do it in a short amount of time and convince people and still have your character, either lovable or very hateable, or whatever you're trying to do with have your audience attached to the character. Yeah. Short story writing is hard, high concept.
Yes. Yeah, well, the thing with the case files is, but the S46 was a case file. It was written as a immersive document, which could be used in role play. This is essentially a thing that you could give to a role player, like, okay, this is what you have to face. And in order, if the character is to survive, he has to, read the dossier carefully. Mm-hmm. That is the idea behind the case files, essentially. Yeah. So there are actual things that exist in that world. So you have this whole almost philosophical meta thing going on when you think about it. Yeah. So you actually have to, and that is inspired by the SCP Foundation, by the way. And what I always had this thing in my head for a very long time. When I had we still have a friend we barely see, but we're still friends. We had this ham radio. We did ham radio for a while, and we would sit there at night. You would listen to the static coming through the ham radio at night with no other sounds, and then you would encounter a number station. So you're sitting there in a dimly lit room behind a radio, and you're hearing these numbers. You hear this eerie song play. Mm-hmm. Like the Lincoln Poacher, that is what S46 in particular is inspired by. We actually, Musical Wizardry, one of the musicians on our Discord actually made the song.
Oh,
yes.
That's cool.
I actually made it. I actually recorded it. I actually have her voice play on the radio. I have not yet published it.
I was going to say, when you publish it, send it to me and I'll put it in this, or, I'll...
Yeah. Oh, I can do that. I might have it as a single thing.
That'd be great.
He made a song inspired by "Flowers in the Rain," which he is playing, and yes, you can find it somewhere in the story archive where that comes from.
Sure, yeah.
So there are actually breadcrumbs to the past of the call girl in the archive currently. You're just gonna have to look for it.
Yeah, see, that's the tough part. Is like, yes. That's why I'm I ask you to send me links, because it's like I don't have time to look through all of them. I would love to watch all of them from the very beginning.
What would be the fun of that? What would be the fun of that if I would just give you the solution to the puzzle? Yeah. But that's the thing with this series. Like, they're all high concept short stories, but it does have a conclusion. Like, it does present you with a beast, and the idea is that these numbers refer to you. Yeah. And she has your number. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, a difference with a lot of stuff. Like, this is supposed to be you. You're our target. When she's calling out those numbers, one of them is yours. Yeah. And there's this threat at the end of it, essentially, that the reader herself is being threatened. Yeah. With the statement that she has your number. and the interviews, like you've got the dry information, like the pure research data,
Sure.
like this is what we know of her,
Mm-hmm.
which is also very difficult. I try to keep the description sections as short as possible because in SCP they tend to drone on with all these details, and like sometimes they go into complete mathematical formulas.
Sure.
And yes, they are important to the story. That's the thing. If you really want to understand it, how one of those creatures work, you actually have to understand it. I stay away from that. But if other people want to do that, be free to write that. And then you go into the interviews where somebody tells them of their actual experiences with those things, and you have to be very creative. Like, what's it like to actually encounter it, and what will it do to you when you encounter it? And
So some of it got pretty gruesome.
But it is. This is a horror file, as it were. Some are more comical. I always try to combine humor with horror. Especially one of the earlier published stories, Pandora's Mirror. That's published in, I forgot the anthology name. But that's probably one of the which is about a mirror that allows you to see versions of yourself in different realities. And of course there's the possibility that you might encounter yourself somewhere in the multiverse. Well, if you think your life sucks, well, look at this version of you. Oh, she does have it. She does have a good life. Well, and you get to see all of it, how it's in all the way. Yeah, and all the ways that her life is better than yours.
Sure.
So it's a pretty gruesome thing when you think about it, where you're just confronted with other versions of yourself.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I'm quite set on is that there is no chosen ones and stuff like that. That annoyed me about somebody posted that Jekyll and Hyde series that was made in 2015. And which is about the grandson of Jekyll and Hyde, which okay, why not?
Sure.
But then all of a sudden, everything was about him. He was now part of a prophecy, and it's like, well, the Jekyll and Hyde, another great example of a great, well-written short, high concept short story.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But there, they have a very appealing mystery. Like, who is this guy who just ran over a little girl in the street and doesn't give a shit?
Yeah.
And then we already know the answer. So for everyone in the world, the whole story is spoiled.
Sure.
Because who doesn't know Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Gosh, yeah. If you.
But if you were just reading that for the first time, you're like, oh, that's yeah. And that's also something, I did in the Rage in the Machine. Like, don't explain anything. Everything is show, don't tell. Everything is seen through his eyes. Nothing is explained. And, you just go to the world and everything is like, the fog of war just vaporizes in front of you as you move with the characters. So, that's kind of like how I try to write all my fiction. So it's constantly that mystery and, there is a lot of lore, and yes, there is this master plan, as Sean Marsh put it. But, you're gonna have to read the rest to figure it out what the grand master plan is, and it's to create that thing where people just keep coming back for, like I said, and connect with the other fans, and the people start, hey, what's the deal with airplane food on these airships? And then that people start talking about it, and and all these different writers, of course, like what were those two writers working on when they wrote those 4 stories? Because you can do experiments like that.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And
you don't have to keep them if they don't work. You don't have to keep them, but yeah.
So that's kind of my hope for the series. That's experiments like that start to happen, and people keep coming back and meet all these authors and artists, and and I also try to encourage cosplay, which we already do as our own group. I also put like an association mask that people can make of foam or leather, as a basic thing that's freely available on the new website. Yeah, and we're already talking for what? Oh, no.
Yeah.
For 90 minutes. No, 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
No, we started at 9.
About an hour and a half. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so that's the Association of Ishtar, open to creators of all kinds. Check it out you can find it on YouTube, on Radio Retrofuture, the beginner Steampunk beginner's guide. You can all find you can find all that on YouTube. You can find Bonsart on Facebook. And what other social media are you on?
I'm on so many places. I'm on Instagram. I'm mostly on Instagram. I spent way too much time on social media promoting my own stuff. Speaking of self-promotion. But a lot of on Facebook, Instagram. I'm working on a new website, the Association of ISHTAR.com, where I'm constantly working on. So that is going to get more features, and it's more than just a promotional site. I'm building it to be an actual community site. So and the more questions and demands you make, the more will be available on that site, as far as it's technologically possible. I'm working on getting all the stories on there, instead of the strange wiki thing that we've got now. And we already have one guest writer on there, Mark Brandon, who wrote a very what's the writer called again? The guy who wrote the Black Stone again, created Conan. Robert E. Howard. Finally.
Howard.
Yes.
I was going to say Herman.
Robert E. Howard.
I was like Herman. No, Howard.
No. He wrote a very That's another writer we speak too little of. But he wrote a story very much inspired by Robert E. Howard. Go check that out. What else? Yes, and I hope to post the entire second season of the Steampunk Beginner's Guide very soon. We'll also keep making like audiobooks and stuff. If you enjoy working on things like that, I would love to have some help with that. Support us in whatever way you can. You can also help us financially if that would be great, so I can pay our artists. Because you do pay your artists. So yes. Yeah. Well, some are crazy enough to do it for free, like Musical was free, who's donated create a lot of music for my channel. The drawings are all drawn by paid artists. So. They are very busy people, and they can actually work for money in the same time they're making drawings for me. So so that's really unfortunate. The last video I made with Des 3D, but I don't care much for the aesthetic. I mean, it's not terrible, absolutely not. I mean, you can do amazing things with Des 3D, but it was the horror episode that barely nobody watched. So okay. So if someone wants to go buy The Wrench in the Machine, your novel, or S36 Girl comic book, yes, they're both.
Where should they go?
They're both they're all linked, of course, on our website, associationofishtar.com, but they all bring you to Amazon.
Okay.
I am considering offering signed copies on the website somehow. Keep an eye on the blog at least. By becoming a member, and by becoming a member, you also get access to our collection of short stories, which are a few dozen. So, all right, well, great. You've got a reason to come back to the website.
All right, so that's www.ASSOCIATION OFISHTAR .com. I'll write it underneath there, so for people that need the visual. And so Bonsart, thank you. It's been really awesome talking to you. Oh, there it is. Hey.
In mirror image, I just realized. Yes. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Tipples, Stops, and Tipples. I was Bonsart, and as always, make things your way. Good night.
Good night. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Subscribe.
Thank you.